Welcome to the Miracle You, guiding you on the journey towards finding passion and purpose and how to discover, create, and live a life by your design. Whether your success has been plentiful or your missed opportunities have been overwhelming, we can help you become a more empowered, masterful person and show you how to share your gift with the world. It's time to inspire change from within with the host of the Miracle You, Vince Kramer.
Hello, imagination. I'm Vince Kramer, your host, and welcome to the Miracle You, where you learn about the magic of living your life by finding the example in real life.
I've shared many times about wake-up calls on the podcast, and it's laced throughout our programs that we use to help people discover, create, and live their miracle lives. One of the things that we don't talk about very often is the fact that many times we have a series of wake-up calls to push us in the direction that we're meant to go, or call us to the reason that we came to Earth. I've explained it many times in my story about the number of wake-up calls it took me to finally wake up to find what was missing in my life. But it happens to many of us. We get this wake-up call that we know there's more that we should do, and we step out to start making a difference. But it's still not the difference that we're here to make. It's still not our divine intent. So another wake-up call comes to take us further down the road, to open us up, to help us develop more gifts and talents. And that wake-up call then delivers us to the true difference that we're meant to make in the world. Sometimes these wake-up calls just seem to happen to us in the world. Other times we create them ourselves. But it's in paying attention to the wake-up and being willing to move forward into the fullness of who you are that will truly help transform the world. I'm with Toby Dorr today. Having never had so much as a traffic ticket, Toby shattered her mold of perfection by helping a convicted murderer, a trainer in her prison dog program, escape in a dog crate. Her story is a lesson in perspective. Instead of focusing on everything she lost, she made a conscious choice to use her 27 months in prison as a period to reflect on her life, heal emotional wounds, plot a course for the future, and embrace the sisterhood of women she encountered behind bars. Toby Dorr, are you ready to share the miracle of you with the imagination?
I certainly am. I'm looking forward to it.
I am so excited to have you here. I only learned about you about a month ago, and I was fascinated with your story and the difference that you know that you're meant to make in the world. So this is going to be a great discussion. Before we go there right now, could you tell us a little bit more about who you are right now and what you're doing in the world?
Sure. I live outside of Washington, D.C., and I have created a series of workbooks to help women work through their own emotional trauma and learn to heal themselves and find their place in the world. Because I believe every one of us is born with something to do and some special skill that only we can bring to the world. And in order to be able to do that, we have to learn who we are and heal our emotional baggage and be able to move forward and proclaim that truth.
Yeah, you could be a spokesperson for Imagine Miracles. We're so aligned with why we're here and what we believe in the world. Toby, I kind of alluded to it in the introduction, but you've got such an interesting story of what woke you up to really deliver to the world what you're meant here to do. And it was something that, unlike a lot of people that I interview on the podcast, it's something that didn't seem to just happen to you. It was a creation of yours. Could you tell us about the wake up and how you got to that place where you just knew that you had to do the prison break, and then what that meant to you in waking up?
Sure. So I had been married for 28 years, and I married the first boy I ever dated. We met when I was 15 and got married at 20. And I believed my life was just like everybody else's, and this is what life was like. And after I was laid off from my job at Sprint in 2001. And I kind of struggled with what I was going to do and who I was going to be, because that job at Sprint was so much a part of who I was. And then I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. And after my cancer surgery, I realized I had done absolutely nothing to justify my presence on this earth. If I had died from that cancer, nobody would have, it wouldn't have changed the world at all. And I realized that I wanted to do something that would make a difference. And so I started a prison dog program. And I took stray dogs from shelters into the men's prison that was just a couple miles from my house. And I left them with the inmate dog handlers, and they rehabilitated these dogs. And then I took them out to adoption. And that was something significant. I was changing lives there. I was changing the lives of the dogs. I was changing the lives of the inmates, which I never expected. But, you can imagine it. As humans, we're social beings, and we crave being part of a community. But in prison, it's not a community you want to be a part of. And you can't trust anyone, so you can't confide in anyone. You can't even hug anyone or touch anyone because it's forbidden. And it's just a really artificial environment. So by bringing those dogs into the prison, all of a sudden these inmates who had not been able to talk freely to anyone in decades could now talk to these dogs and pour out their hearts and hug these dogs, and the dogs loved them back. And so it was definitely changing the world of those inmates, and it was changing the whole attitude and atmosphere of the prison. The warden loved it. So I went from taking 7 dogs in to having 100 dogs in the prison at any given time. And, the prison dog program just grew. And at the same time, my dad was diagnosed with cancer. And, it was terminal. There was nothing we could do. And he had a surgery. And I got called at home like at 11:30 at night that they had to take him to emergency surgery. So I rushed to the hospital, and we were there all night. And one night he came out of surgery and went back to the ICU unit. And then I left the prison, the hospital, and went straight to the prison. And one of my dog handlers, saw me that day, and he said, "Toby, what's going on with you? There's something off. What burden are you carrying? Because, you're not yourself." And I told him, about my dad having to have emergency surgery and that he had cancer. And he said to me, "Oh, I'm so glad that your husband was there to go with you, because that's a big burden to carry by yourself." And I said, "Well, he didn't go with me. He stayed home because he said there's no sense in both of us losing sleep. So he stayed at home." And this dog handler said to me, "Why are you married to him?" And I had no answer. And no one had ever asked me that question, and I had never given it any thought. And I had no answer. And so, I left the prison, and I didn't go back for several days. And I kept thinking about, what's the answer to that question? Why don't I have an answer to that question? Once you hear that, you can't unhear it. So, now I realize that my marriage is not worth being in, but and so I started this conversation with the dog handler who asked me the question, and we started having these deeper conversations about life and about the world and about, everything. And so I started falling in love with him, and he fell in love with me. And then he asked me one day, "If I weren't in prison, would you go with me?" And I said, "Well, or if I weren't in prison, would you be with me?" And I said, "I might." And so in his mind, he decided, well, I need to get out. And so he started thinking of ideas of how to escape. And after he had worked out some kind of definitive plans, then he started sharing them with me. And at first I was like, oh, no way. And then he'd ask me a question. He'd say, I think this would work. And he'd tell me an idea. And I'd say, no, here's the problem with that idea. This thing over here isn't going to work. And so we started, to me, it was kind of a game, just figuring out how we could make this puzzle work. And it actually really did work. And so, I ended up smuggling him out of the prison in a dog crate, and we were off on the run for 2 weeks.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
What a story. And, I'm going to try to take this interview in a different direction than you've probably had in any other podcast or your TV appearances. You had a wake-up call in your layoff from Sprint. You had a wake-up call in your cancer, and you knew that you were there to do something more. So it sounds like you kind of, I found something that I think will fulfill that calling that I'm having. But the universe says, no, Toby, you that's not it
more
yet.
for you to do.
Yes, there's so much more for you. So then you co-created the jailbreak. You co-created something else to really get your attention. But what I like about your story, Toby, is you not only co-created something to wake you up, really get your attention, but then you co-created an opportunity for you to learn more about what you're here to do in the world and how to do it. Could you share a little bit about your experience? I don't want to talk about the 2 weeks and all of that. I want to talk about what you learned in prison.
So there's really 2 more significant wake-up calls in my life. So I got sentenced to 27 months in prison, which was a stunner for me because I thought, well, if we get caught, I might get in trouble, but I never envisioned myself going to prison. And prison was definitely a wake-up call. But at the same time, I have to say it was the best thing that ever happened to me, going to prison, because you lose everything and you are at rock bottom. And so the only way to go is up. You can't get any lower than where you already are. And my mom was wonderful and supportive of me and, just was the perfect image of unconditional love. But my sisters were not so much. And my sisters were embarrassed of my actions. They feel like, it embarrassed them. It embarrassed them that their sister would break somebody out of prison and would, be a felon, and they couldn't get past that embarrassment. And so we really had a breakdown in our relationship. And I struggled with that a lot because I kind of expected my sisters to give me the same unconditional love that my parents did. And an article came out a year after I was in prison. I worked with a reporter from the Wall Street Journal, and he did this like 4-page personal feature story. And I thought it was a beautiful story. I thought it really explained what I was thinking and what my concerns were. And, in the article, I said, I worried that, John's life was ruined. John was the man I helped escape from prison because, he's never going to get out of prison now. And my sisters were furious at that story. And I had this emotional breakdown in prison, and I started believing that, my sisters probably would have been happier had I been killed in the car crash when we got arrested. And so I started thinking, well, would the world be better off if I wasn't here? Am I just trouble? And so I ended up on suicide watch in prison because I had the courage and the foresight to reach out to the psychiatrist and tell her, I am in a bad place. And so I spent 3 days on suicide watch, and suicide watch is the worst thing. You're naked in a room with no furniture. There's no bed. There's no pillow. There's just a concrete floor. And they give you this very small blanket, and it's oblong. So you can lay on it or you can cover up with it, but you can't do both. And it's cold, and the front of the room is glass, and there's an officer sitting outside your room watching everything you do. So you are at your most vulnerable there. And I took those 3 days and just laid there, and I went through my whole life and my mind and the possibilities of what I could do, and where could I go from here. And I cried out for help many times during that weekend. And on the last day of that suicide watch, I heard this voice come into my head, and it said, and I believe it was God, and he said, "You will get through this, and I'll be right here with you the entire way. And you were right to tell your story. In fact, you will tell your story, and your story will change the lives of women." And so, I have a purpose now, and I left that suicide watch determined that I was going to move forward and find a way to tell my story. And so first I had to really heal myself and go back through a bunch of childhood trauma and trauma from my marriage, and work through all these things, the loss of my daughter as a baby. There was a lot of things I had to go back through and heal from, because I had never dealt with them. I just kind of buried them. And so I spent probably a good 10 years digging through all that stuff and figuring out who I was and healing these wounds. And then Joyce Mitchell in New York helped 2 inmates escape from prison in 2015. And she was in love with one of the inmates, and they were both convicted murderers. And so this story's all over the news. And I told my husband, I have a choice to make. We need to decide what I'm going to do, because the media is going to come calling, because they're going to want to know why a woman could help someone escape from prison. And they're going to think I might have some answers for them. So I need to decide, am I going to speak out, or am I going to, just remain invisible? And I decided, my husband said, "You're not invisible, Toby." So I decided to speak out. And in doing so, I found my purpose. I found my calling. And I realized that this was what I was born for, is to speak out and tell my story and let women know that they can overcome whatever's in their life. They don't have to just accept what the rest of the world think about them, that they can overcome, and they can use the trauma in their own lives as fuel to create this passion to go out and do something that's going to make a difference. And so that was the second really transformational moment in my.
Yes, that's huge. A quick question. When you say that you talked to your husband, is it your original husband?
No. Oh, sorry. I should have clarified that. No, we got divorced the day before I went to jail or prison. My ex-husband divorced me. So it was an emergency divorce. We got divorced in like 2 weeks. No, we don't have a relationship at all.
Okay. So your new husband, excellent. Thank you for
yes,
clarifying
I should have
that.
said that back then. Sorry. Yes, I did get remarried, and I had no intentions of getting married, but it just worked out. So
Understood. So let me ask you, first of all, thanks for sharing that it was a 10-year journey for you to heal and to uncover the emotions, because so many of us believe that we're going to hear our calling, or we're going to know what our purpose is, and we are going to step right into it. And some of us may, but for those of us that have been called to really make a difference at the level that you're talking about, and I don't want the imagination to get me wrong, because I think every individual on this planet has a big difference to make, but some people need to experience the pain. Some people need to understand what others are going through at a level that helps the people that they're going to help, because they're understood and they know. So I appreciate you sharing that it was a 10-year journey for you. So you learned to heal yourself. You had help doing that. And you brought the understanding of all the pain that's going on in our prison system and all the, really you were seen and loved. And that's what we're all looking for. And in being seen and loved, you were drawn to do something that you normally wouldn't do. So we all need to do that. And in your understanding now, you've developed some ways to help people become seen and loved. And you've developed ways for people to heal those wounds that actually make us feel bad about ourselves. Could you share with us about those?
Yes. So I realized, a couple of years ago that I had been able to use that 27 months in prison almost as a gift of time, that I had no responsibilities, no deadlines. And so I could spend that entire time focusing on myself, which never really happens out in the world because there's so many things distracting us. And I thought, if I could get that message to women in prison and give them some guidelines for how they could work through these emotional wounds, that could change lives. And so I created a workbook called Butterflies Unleashed. And it's a 12-week program, and it has a series of character building exercises. So we talk about discernment and purpose and faith and vision and boundaries and gratitude. Gratitude's the foundation of everything, because if you can find something in your worst circumstances to be grateful for, it suddenly changes everything. And so I created this workbook, Butterflies Unleashed. And then I realized that it works for women not in prison as well, because I find that so many of us, and myself included, before I ever went to prison, I was already in a prison. And it was a prison that I'd created myself because I wouldn't look at my trauma and try to heal it. And I just kind of remained hidden and buried everything. And so I think, the theme of that book is really escape your prison. And most of our prisons are self-imposed. And so, the only one who can help you get out of prison is yourself. And that's the purpose of the Butterflies Unleashed book. But it applies, to women outside of prison as well, although I first wrote it for women in prison. And then I created a second workbook called Be Unleashed. And this is all about community. And it's for women who are trying to find a place in a healthy community, because you really are only as good as the company you keep. And so you need to find out how to put yourself into a healthy community, and you need to learn how to be a contributing member of that healthy community, not just a receiver, but you need to give as well. And so that's what that workbook is about, how to create this healthy community. And then I created a third workbook called Dragonflies Unleashed. And it's for those women who feel they have a calling of some kind, but they can't quite put their finger on it. So there's some exercises in that book to try to help them refine and direct their calling so that they know, what the things are that they want to go out and do. So I call it the Unleash series.
Wow, that's so amazing. And I know there's more to come. For each and every one of us, we have that purpose. And I like what you said at the beginning of the podcast, that we brought it in. I mean, we decided before we ever even decided to come to this earth that this is the difference that we're going to make. And we brought that blueprint in, and we forgot. And we had to forget so we could grow and learn and experience the things like you said that you created to help yourself grow and learn, and then truly open the door to living that way. Would you say, and you also shared that, the gift of prison, could you look back and say that the prison that you put yourself in with your ex-husband and that experience, would you say that there were gifts in that also?
There were gifts in that, but I couldn't see them. And I couldn't see them until I started working through and healing this emotional trauma that I've had. But not as much. I kind of feel like, 28 years is gone. And, I hate to say it was wasted, but I kind of feel like it was.
One interesting thing, it's finding the gift is part of what we do at Imagine Miracles. So, a gift that I see in that 28 years, without that 28 years, you wouldn't have had the connection with John.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And if you wouldn't have had the connection with John, you wouldn't have had your 27 months to become who you are.
That's exactly right. Yeah, you're right. And I appreciate you pointing that out. And I'm going to have to remember that, because you're right. That was a gift.
And it probably took the 28 years to be able to be in that space, to accept John and what his soul helped your soul do.
Yes, I do agree with that.
So what do you want? What difference do you want to make in the world? What do you believe your divine intent is, your reason for being here?
I think my reason is to inspire women to choose themselves and to heal themselves and uncover their unique gift, because the world needs their gift. I mean, everybody can write a book. I mean, there's a lot of people who write books, but the book that this person over here writes is going to have a totally different message than this person over here. So it's not that we uncover a gift a woman has to be an author. We uncover that woman's voice to tell the world what they need to hear so that they can heal themselves, or, go on and accomplish whatever it is they were called to do. Because there's strength in community.
One of the most important things for, I think, all of us to understand is we can choose to have workbooks, we can choose to have classes, we can try to teach people what we learned and help them from what we learned. But the most powerful thing we bring to the world is our story. And it doesn't have to be in a book form or anything else, because people aren't alone.
That's right.
You experienced this, and I have felt that way. And I felt like I was a prisoner in my marriage for 28 years. And I felt like just being loved was the most important thing in the world. And our stories are so important. And then you shared something so powerful. We all have these unique gifts to share, and there's 7.8 billion plus people in the world. There's people that need to hear it your way. The people need to see it your way, because they're in alignment with you energetically. And I know, because of your experience in prison, that you're even tapping into a larger group of women, and then understanding, some people are in prison just because of bad luck.
Yes.
There's a lot of people that aren't in prison just because of good luck. And like you said, there's so many that can be helped.
Yes, I agree. And there's so many things that need to change in our criminal justice system. And that's another passion of mine. But it's such a big, complex political, battle. So,
the amazing thing and the gift in it, Toby, is that you're helping people heal their emotions. You're helping them see that they're truly here for a reason, for a purpose. And it might not be your purpose to change the criminal justice system.
That's right.
But you might help somebody who does.
That's right. I might, and in some of the stories in my book about some of the things that happen in prison, somebody might read that has the authority and the power to change something. So.
Exactly. Or find that authority and power,
Yes.
because that's who they are.
That's right. That's right.
So
Yeah.
powerful. Believe it or not, we're getting towards the end of our time together. And I would really love for you to share a piece of guidance that you want the imagination to take away from our time together.
Okay. So the first and very most important thing is that none of us are our worst mistake. So don't get hung up on whatever mistake you may have made, because that's not who you are. You're so much more than that. And the most important thing that I found on this whole journey is that love wins. Every single time, love wins. And so that kind of becomes my motto. And I found in prison, I had so much love for so many of these women that other people thought were unlovable. But it doesn't hurt anything to love someone. Love changes the world. And so my motto really is resist fear. Never make a decision based on fear. So resist fear, love with your whole heart, and live your life with conviction.
Oh, thank you for sharing that guidance. Love and fear are the same energy stream. You can't love and have fear at the same time.
That's right.
Open yourself up to accepting and loving. And as Toby shared with us so graciously through the podcast, gratitude is so important. It is the highest, or one of the highest, vibrational emotions. And as you step into gratitude, you're going to change your life. You're going to attract those things in your life that, one, you deserve, two, that you're meant to attract, and three, you're going to make the difference that you're meant to make. And we can all do it if we surround ourselves with a community that supports us. But as Toby shared, we support also. For those of you who want to know more about Toby, go to themiracleyou.com, look for Toby's episode, and all that information will be available to you. If you're interested in pre-ordering Toby's book, go to tobydorr.com to learn more about the upcoming book that details Toby's story. Toby Dorr, thank you so much for joining us today, sharing your story. Giving your love to the imagination is so powerful, and I have gratitude for you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I do too. So it's been a great experience.
Thank you so much. On behalf of my wife, Mary, who's my business partner, also the entire team here at Imagine Miracles, we want to wish each and every one of you a miracle day.
You've completed this episode of The Miracle You, but we have plenty more to help you discover your own personal passion and purpose. Head over to themiracleyou.com for free resources to assist you on your journey, as well as register for our free webinar, Discover Your Miracle Life, 3 mind awakening steps toward your unique purpose, or apply for a one-on-one Your Life, Your Way breakthrough session and discover your next best step on your journey. All available exclusively on our website. That's themiracleyou.com. We look forward to sharing more experiences of passion, purpose, and life by design next time, right here on The Miracle You.